In this series called 30-Minute Masterpieces, we explore artworks that can be completed within a 40-minute class period. Welcome to Painting with Janine Liza. In this class, we will be making some beautiful black and white greeting cards. Materials. You'll need 2 pieces of watercolor paper folded and taped to a board. These pieces are 7" by 11", I believe, folded. And then I've used masking tape to hold them down. You want to make sure the fold is at the top of the cards. We're going to use a palette, the larger spaces on the palette, and Tempera paints, black and white. Paper towel, masking tape, 2 circles of cardboard. They're about 2 inches around. Some brushes, large and small, and a pencil. We may or may not use some of these. And water. The circles can be 2 or 3 inches around as long as they fit nicely on the paper. We're going to grab some tape and make some holders for these circles to turn them into stamps. So we're just going to carefully fold and go with the shape of the edge of the circle, fold it over, and then create a loop that will stick together like this, and then tape the tape down on the other side, folding it under again. And now it's a stamper. We may only use 1 of them, but we can prepare 2 just in case. We'll start with the white tempera. Just squeeze it out of the bottle onto the card, zigzagging it down. We're just going to cover the card with it, and just enough that there'll be a nice sort of thick layer on the surface of the card. And when we're done putting the white on, we will cover the lower card with the black tempera in the same way. It can be tricky to spread this paint so thick, so what you may have to do is just barely touch the paint and brush across to get it to evenly spread out. There. Now it's nice and even. Thick and even. Now let's get our cardboard stampers and a little bit of paint. We'll just pour some white paint around, and then we'll get a little bit of black paint and swirl that in there. And maybe a bit more white, just layer it on a bit. All right. I'm going to place this down, leaving about a little more than 1 inch at the top of the paper because this is going to be an ornament. I'm going to turn this around and until the paint kind of oozes out of the edges. And then once that I see that, I know that the paint has spread nicely. And I'm just turning to sort of twist the colors together and get a nice swirl. And then I'm going to lift and see how it looks. Wow! So the reason we leave the gap at the top is to create a holder at the top. Now I'm going to do the lower card by just adding a little extra paint to the stamp that I already had instead of using a second one. Now let's see this card. Well, there you have it. The little swirls of white there, and you can always add more paint to the stamp and put it back on if you want to add more, but I think it looks great like that. Now with some white and black paint on the palette, I'm going to paint the little rectangular holders at the top of the ornaments, and we'll use the black paint on the white card at the top and the white paint on the black card at the base. And part of the fun of this is just scooping up the paint and gently dropping it into place, because you're putting it into thick paint. So you want to make sure that you fill that area with thick paint also. Once the rectangular shape is complete, I'm going to define the edges of the ornament. I could take a little white from here and define the edge, because it'll stand out nicely against the background. And I am going to get my stamper and put a little extra white paint around the edges of that, only because this one didn't actually get a lot of the sort of contrast in it. So I want to have more of the white paint sort of swirling around and getting to the edges to define the ornament a little more. Oh, that's much better. Now I'm going to put a loop for holding the ornament at the top in white on the lower card and in the black paint on the top card. Once the loops are complete, I'll go back to refining the edges of the ornament. Just very carefully defining the curved line of the edges. Where the paint protrudes outside of the circle, you may need to go back and forth between the white and the black paint to define the edges. When we're done with this, we are going to add some little stars around the ornaments. We're going to do this by just dropping paint. White on the lower card, little drops 1, 2, and 3, either side of the ornament. And you don't even hardly need to squeeze the bottle to get this drop. We're going to use the end of the paintbrush, the small paintbrush, for this technique. We'll put 1, 2, and 3 drops either side of the ornament on the top card. And then we'll get the paintbrush, turn it around, and use the end of it to gently scratch from the center outwards the shape of a star. Now, after a couple of scrapes, you may need to wipe the end of the brush with some tissue so that you don't carry the other paint into the one that you're scraping out. Now, if some of the other paint does get into your shape, you can just scoop up some more paint and put it in the center and scrape that outwards. I imagine this to be a lot of fun for little kids to try out, but I have to say I've really enjoyed doing this myself too. So if you're a big kid, you might also enjoy it. These cards will need about 2 days to dry before removing the tape. As for the card circle, you can wipe that off with some paper towel, put it aside to dry, and reuse it. The paint that is actually on the surface of it would probably just serve to make it stronger for next use anyways. Thank you for viewing and or trying out this class. I have a similar class to this one using neon paints with acrylic on my YouTube channel. If you're looking for more fun with paint, go to Art with Janine Liza on YouTube.